Imagine waking up one morning to an anonymous letter, not just any letter, but one that exposes your deepest, darkest secret. A secret you thought absolutely no one knew. Even worse, it implies that this unknown tormentor is watching your every move. Now imagine this doesn't just happen once, but it escalates, targeting your friends, your family, your entire community. This isn't fiction. This actually happened in a quiet, unsuspecting town in Ohio, evolving into one of America's most perplexing unsolved mysteries. What force was at play in Circleville, and how did a simple pen and paper plunge an entire town into paranoia and tragedy? To truly grasp the chilling events that unfolded, we need to go back to the mid-1970s to Circleville, Ohio, a town of around 13,000 residents, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, or so it seemed. It was a place where life was generally peaceful, punctuated by local gossip and community events. But by 1977, a dark shadow began to fall over this idyllic facade. It started subtly, with a series of handwritten letters, crudely scrawled and unsigned, appearing in mailboxes. These weren't your typical spam or junk mail. These were deeply personal, accusatory, and unnervingly accurate. The targets varied: neighbors, business owners, even school administrators. The content? Secrets, affairs, clandestine activities, financial improprieties, information that by all accounts should have been private. The letters weren't just revealing, they were threatening. They warned recipients to confess their sins, to stop their activities, or face public exposure. Imagine the terror of reading something so intimately damaging, knowing someone out there possessed this knowledge and was willing to use it. The psychological impact was immediate. Trust eroded. Friends eyed friends with suspicion. Whispers turned into accusations, and a once cohesive community began to fracture under the weight of fear. The initial recipients were, understandably, bewildered and frightened. They wondered who knew their secrets, and more importantly, who was sending these letters. The police were notified, but without a clear suspect, or even a return address, their options were limited. The letters bore no fingerprints, no obvious clues to the sender's identity. But the letter writer, or writers, weren't content with mere exposure. The threats escalated. One of the first prominent targets was Mary Gillespie, a local school bus driver. She received a letter accusing her of having an affair with Gordon Massey, the superintendent of Circleville City Schools. The letter demanded she end the affair, threatening to expose her and her family if she didn't comply. Mary denied the accusations, but the letter writer pushed further, sending notes to her husband, Ron Gillespie, a sheriff's deputy. These letters became increasingly aggressive, implying that Ron was foolish for not seeing what was happening right under his nose. The tension in the Gillespie household became unbearable, fueled by paranoia and the relentless, unseen assault from the letter writer. On August 19, 1977, the situation took a tragic turn. Ron Gillespie, deeply disturbed by the relentless accusations against his wife and himself, went to retrieve his service weapon, claiming he was going hunting. He later died from a gunshot wound to the head. The official ruling was suicide, but the circumstances surrounding his death, particularly the ongoing psychological torment from the letter writer, immediately cast a pall of doubt. Many, including Mary, suspected the letter writer was directly involved, that their psychological warfare had pushed Ron to his breaking point. The town was now utterly terrified. A simple letter had seemingly led to a man's death. The stakes had been raised to an unimaginable level. Following Ron's death, the letters continued, and in some cases, intensified, leaving an ominous note near his body that said, "P.S. When are you going to stop writing all those lies about me?" This message twisted the knife even further, raising the possibility that Ron himself was the letter writer, a theory that made little rational sense to those who knew him, especially given he was also a target. The police investigation, invigorated by the tragedy, now had a real, tangible death to investigate. For years, the letters remained a constant, insidious presence in Circleville. They expanded their reach, targeting local officials, business owners, and seemingly anyone connected, however remotely, to the initial recipients. The nature of the threats evolved too, moving beyond mere exposure to outright intimidation and property damage. In February 1983, a bizarre incident occurred that would become central to the case. Mary Gillespie, still haunted by the letters, discovered a booby-trapped pistol on her bus route. The weapon was rigged to fire when picked up. Authorities managed to trace the weapon to Paul Freshour, Mary's brother-in-law, who was married to Ron Gillespie's sister. This connection, however tenuous, immediately put Freshour under suspicion. Evidence mounted against him, the gun, and, crucially, an expert comparison of his handwriting to the anonymous letters. Despite Freshour's insistent claims of innocence, he was charged with attempted murder for the booby-trapped gun and, indirectly, implicated as the Circleville Letter Writer. He was convicted and sentenced to 7 to 25 years in prison. Many in Circleville breathed a sigh of relief, believing the nightmare was finally over. The letter writer had been caught, and justice, it seemed, was served. But the story was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning to take a truly sinister turn. As Paul Freshour sat in prison, locked away from the outside world, a chilling reality began to emerge. The letters didn't stop. New letters, bearing the same distinctive, menacing tone and content, continued to arrive in Circleville mailboxes. How could this be? The presumed letter writer was behind bars. Was there an accomplice? Or, more terrifyingly, had they convicted the wrong man? This continuation of the letters while Freshour was incarcerated threw the entire case into disarray. It suggested a deeper, more sophisticated conspiracy, or perhaps a cunning individual who had masterminded the entire charade, framing Freshour in the process. Freshour himself received letters while in prison, taunting him about his confinement and promising that the true writer would never be caught. He became, paradoxically, both the convicted perpetrator and a victim of the anonymous writer. The handwriting analysis, once considered ironclad, was now questioned. Could someone have deliberately mimicked Freshour's handwriting, or was the initial analysis flawed? The police, grappling with this unprecedented turn of events, reopened the investigation, but the fresh leads were scarce. The mystery deepened with every new letter. The meticulous nature of the threats, the personal details they contained, suggested someone intimately familiar with the lives of the residents. Was it a local? A group? An outsider exacting some strange form of revenge? The questions multiplied, but answers remained elusive. The psychological torment on the town continued, with the added bizarre layer that their supposed tormentor was behind bars, yet the torment persisted. The true identity of the Circleville letter writer became a haunting enigma, a phantom presence that continued to haunt the community, leaving a trail of broken lives and unanswered questions. Paul Freshour maintained his innocence until his death in 2012, long after he was paroled in 1994. He vehemently argued that he was framed, a convenient scapegoat for a complicated and deeply personal vendetta. To this day, the true identity of the Circleville letter writer remains unknown. There are theories, of course. Some believe it was indeed Freshour, perhaps with an accomplice on the outside sending letters to create doubt. Others point to different individuals, people with obscure connections or grudges, who could have possessed the intimate knowledge required to write such personal letters. The possibility of multiple writers has also been explored, a collective effort born of malice or a shared secret. What began as a series of anonymous notes evolved into a dark chapter in American true crime, a chilling reminder of how easily a community can be fractured by fear and suspicion. The case stands as a stark example of how a single, determined individual, using nothing but a pen and paper, can inflict immense psychological damage and even contribute to tragedy. The mystery endures, a testament to the elusive nature of truth and the enduring power of a secret kept by an unknown hand. If you want to dive deeper into cases where the perpetrator seemingly vanishes into thin air, leaving behind a trail of breadcrumbs that lead nowhere, the next video explores the baffling disappearance of the Springfield Three and the dark theories surrounding their fate.